And we're live.
All right, welcome to another Thursday night of the Guitar Gear Locker. My name is Alex Books. This is my co-host Roger Sutherland, and we have our guests tonight, Rick and Jeremy, once again with us. And tonight is live show 42, and tonight this is going to be a little bit of a mini series. This is actually Rick's idea, which I thought was a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
To do like a little mini series on the history of hard rock, that developed obviously into heavy metal eventually. And so this should be a lot of fun. I guess I'll just try to start it off a little bit. And I just want to touch briefly on the 50s, the birth of rock and roll. But, if you think back to the forefathers like, Chuck Berry and Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis, Eddie Cochran, and the thing about rock and roll, and we also got to mention the blues as well, is first the attitude, I think, that makes it heavy,
Right.
and obviously the aggression and the sound. And if you really think back to like especially Chuck Berry, like how aggressive that was, the guitar riffs and stuff like that. That eventually led into the British bands, especially in the 60s that came out. But I would credit especially Chuck Berry and Little Richard, super aggressive.
Oh yeah.
And I think that hard rock, heavy, whatever you want to call it, heavy metal is like the real true spirit of rock and roll, because it's the attitude, the aggression of it, the power, the energy. And imagine being a kid in the 50s and hearing Chuck Berry. I mean, that must have been like mind blowing, to hear something like that.
Yeah.
Futuristic something, So, but that's where I kind of see it starting out, was in the 50s, really,
I remember my old guitar teacher, Pete Sellers, and this is in the early 80s, so I'm about 14 or 15. I said, Pete, who did you like when you were like, in 1955, 56, 57? So he grew up in Northern Virginia, and he started out playing classical guitar as a kid and taking lessons from a classical player, a great guitar player, amazing. And he said, yeah, and like you just said, when Chuck Berry came out, that was the deal. I was like this is Pete talking, but I was like in the 10th grade or whatever it was. And I hear, Johnny Be Good. And I hear this loud rock and roll guitar and it's cranked and these licks that are being played. And I got to get electric. So at that point, he started getting the electric guitar. And he was still doing classical, but then he got the bug for rock and roll. And definitely that would have been, one of the big things in that era. Definitely Chuck Berry doing what he did.
Sure.
Rock and roll guitar.
I think Chuck Berry's a good example of like what I think heavy metal is in a live setting. Can you because if you go to a heavy metal show, you're not there to eat dinner and sip on wine and have it be background noise. And if you went to a show where they were serving dinner and wine, and then Chuck Berry gets on stage, you put your fork down, and that act is taking over the room.
Right.
Whatever, it commands your attention. Like that's to me a fundamental thing where, jumping ahead to like Black Sabbath, where Tony Iommi was like, we played loud because we didn't want people talking to each other. We wanted them watching us.
Right, yeah. They don't hear us.
you could not converse with each other. You had to pay attention. And I think that's that attitude, like Alex says, is a fundamental key, as is like sort of that, the idea of a guitar solo being an impeccable and must have of a song, kind of comes from that too. There were like jazz soloists and stuff like that, but like to have like a verse and a chorus and then be like, oh, by the way, check this out, essential to what becomes heavy metal later on across most subgenres.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even like Dick Dale, like who played guitar like that, I mean, that was just kind of like futuristic,
Well, I just got done listening to this audio book because I was driving to Georgia and back last week to visit some family. And it's about the history of Fender and Les Paul and how they were like side by side, kind of at the same time revolutionizing guitar. But one of the things about it was involved Dick Dale and how no matter what Fender was doing, because Fender was working directly with Dick Dale to make amps because he kept blowing them up. And it was like, that's the volume that comes in too. Like just this hypnotizing power, crushing all the cower, of the guitar amp having to be loud and having to have stuff that like elements to it that distinguish it from like everything else that was going on. That's where the Fender Showman comes from, by the way.
Oh, I did not know that.
Wow.
I just learned that like last week, like somewhere on Interstate 81.
Learning has occurred.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a nice little piece of history right there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's like this constant evolution that gets us to where we are today. Like if you take somebody who was at a Chuck Berry show and really the hip person who just is getting into that kind of music then, who's ahead of the curve, and you play them an Immolation record, they're going to be like, how did that come to this? Like, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, like, to some extent, like,
yeah,
but it's just all kind of, you hear one thing, you take from it, you manipulate it and do something else.
Right.
Yeah. And, along that way, there's a lot of things that, influences that came into rock music, like classical music, and stuff like that. And, and just industrial sounds and things like that. It's like I've heard priests talk about it, in being in Birmingham and just the industrial noises that influence the guitar, guitar sounds and the guitar riffs, and it kind of gets in your psyche a bit,
Right.
So, there's so much stuff that happened along the way, but I still think that like if you think of a band, like to me, like, some people argue the Rolling Stones, but for me, AC/DC is like the greatest rock and roll band of all time. I mean, they're this pure rock and roll.
So, big fan.
Yeah.
And there's that with Angus. There is a lot of Chuck Berry-isms in what Angus does, and I love it. I mean, I've always loved Angus and Chuck Berry's guitar playing and that energy and then of course once you crank that Marshall distortion into there, it gives it that feeling. Hitting you,
two bands come to mind.
Duck walk, right? You got to get bonus points for duck walking.
Yeah, and it's like AC/DC and Motorhead, two bands that come to mind where I would consider pure rock and roll, and I know they kind of get the heavy metal affiliation a lot, but I still see both of those bands as just pure rock and roll. And
Lemmy would always say that,
very Little Richards all through that music,
Right.
The through line is like there's this sense of like, obviously Alex mentioned the attitude, but also just like the sense of like naughtiness about it, or like whatever this isn't what the generation before was doing,
right?
No matter what, because you take a band like Slayer, that turns into like death metal and black metal later, because like everything just sort of like, because the next generation said that's sick, I want to do it sicker.
Right. Yeah, I want to take
that's the same example. Like AC/DC takes Chuck Berry formula, slaps it through Marshall amps, and kind of picks up the tempo, picks up the volume, because the technology by then has evolved, where you go from small Fender amps to Marshall full stacks and SVTs and all that stuff, and bigger PA systems, and you kind of, the technology also is inspired by the art, which is inspired by the technology, in this perpetual cycle.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, and you can track a lot of the origins of rock back to like the Memphis area or era and it kind of like, it was kind of almost an underground movement within like black areas, where they're starting this whole rhythm and blues kind of underground thing that Elvis kind of picked up on, and some. It's funny because for years, they said Elvis, ripped that whole genre off, and maybe he did. I don't know. the movie kind of told the story differently, that he was kind of so impressed and so enamored with that genre of music, he kind of adopted it. But that was kind of like an underground movement, is kind of like the grassroots of rock, right?
Yeah.
And Chicago too. You got to mention Chicago.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
We had well, in the same book they were mentioning how in the 60s, I think it was late 50s, even maybe it was 59 or 60 or something, Muddy Waters goes to England.
Right.
And the first concert he plays his amp so loud it's distorted and it like shakes people. A lot of people hated the show because he played his amp so loud that it distorted. But there were some kids in the audience, you know, a la like Keith Richards, you know, before there anybody who were like, that's a cool sound. And then you just sort of be inspired by that to take it and do your own thing with it.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You know, and so many great blues players that were back then, guitar players, like, man,
Yeah.
you know, and you talk about the attitude, you know, it's like, wow.
And again,
The Keith Richards documentary me and my wife watched the other night, and you know, it's just funny how he, you know, he went in and you know, when he first came to America, and that's all he wanted to do was like, you know, visit Nashville and hang out in Chicago, and you know, guys, it's like, what do you want to go there for, you know? And you know, he wanted to meet all those heroes, and you know, the guys that inspired them to do what they did, and he there's a part in the documentary where it's him and Buddy Guy, and Buddy Guy was talking about when he first met them, and just was so thankful to the Stones, like thankful, you know, for what you guys are doing, you know, exposing our music, you know, to this wider audience. But I guess
that seems like that's what happened, is, you know, that, and it's weird how like even what you all experienced with extreme music and all that, it kind of that whole underground scene, but way back, you could track it almost to the beginning of rock and roll, and the origins was kind of underground. And then, you know, you needed those people, Muddy Waters and those people to bring it to the forefront. And then, you know, other artists to bring it even higher than that, you know, but it seems like it just kind of started as like an underground thing, you know?
Yeah. I'm kind of with you, Roger, with the Elvis thing, where I get the sense when you listen to those early Sun records, Elvis being as young as he was and likely uncorrupted by, you know, later success.
Yeah.
I think he was just a fan of that music. I think he was a cool kid in that area. It probably wasn't that strange to, you know, be finding yourself in areas with African Americans in your town and seeing that sort of musical outlet that has this kind of level of passion that maybe you were never exposed to before, and getting inspired by that.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of it, I mean, things were different then, right? So, you know, that whole genre of music is happening. And unfortunately, during those times, the people that were performing those in the underground venues couldn't get the exposure. And, you know, he was the guy that kind of brought it out. I you know, it's like I said earlier, you know, for years, you know, I heard people say, because I grew up, both my parents were big Elvis fans. And, you know, I you know, as I got older, I kept hearing, well, you know, Elvis just ripped everybody off. And I started thinking that. So then I went and, you know, saw the movie that was kind of a documentary, and, you know how much of that is fiction and how much is real. And I kind of appreciated the fact of how they, you know, say you spun it or how you told the story. It was like, he really was a fan of that music and that underground music and wanted to bring it out.
I mean, we've all taken something from somebody, maybe not, you know, consciously, but it just happens, you know. It's kind of like it's like a circle kind of going around and around, you know, of song, you know.
I'm gonna throw a couple comments up before there. So R.I.P. Brent Hines, BB King, and you know, that was another thing. I talk about you know, it's probably the only movie I've seen in the last 10 years. I don't like going to movie theaters, but I did see that movie. I was surprised how close those two were. And it, you know, I'm a little south of Tupelo, but Elvis loved the music, played juke joints and black churches. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's, you know, and I think that's, you know, that the music needed that exposure probably to get out, or during those times and the way the world was then, it just wasn't going to get out unless it had.
Right. Well, much like the blues of, you know, the Delta blues, the Chicago blues, that nobody outside of maybe musicologist level, you know, sort of people who are followers of American music in general might be into, but the mainstream didn't give a hoot about the blues until, you know, the kids in England started caring about it, reinterpreting it, giving it back to them, and then suddenly, you know, we're looking at everything. And again, what's attractive about the blues if you're 19 years old in England in the early 60s? It's different. It's got an attitude to it. They're singing about, you know, relationships and some naughty stuff. To some extent, it's kind of the beginning of devil's music.
Yeah.
We know it in a modern sense. You're taking melodies and stuff like that maybe come from church, but you're twisting it around and you're amping up the tempos to get people to dance and make naughty stuff later, you know, and that's sort of like an anti-establishment sort of music, getting back to heavy metal, where it's anti-mainstream at its genesis.
And that's what probably, you know, scared a lot of people, because the physical aspect of it, like you said earlier, Jeremy, like, you know, it's like you went from sitting there to just listening to reacting to the music, you know, and, you know, I mean, you know, you think about like the Beatles, you know, it's like what all the screaming women, you know, like losing their minds back then.
Yeah.
You couldn't even hear the band.
And all the boys watching it go, I got to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Pick up an instrument and play guitar.
John said Bill Haley in the comments from Chester. I didn't know they were from Chester, Pennsylvania.
Bill,
predate Elvis. Yeah.
Bill Haley, I think, was sort of in on that Western swing sort of stuff, which also is an element of early rock and roll.
Yeah.
See you later, alligator. See, I know one song. I always say I don't know anything about music. I know a little bit about old music. John, did I impress you with that?
We'll just turn on Happy Days. There you go. There's Bill Haley.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Exactly.
Rock around the clock.
I guess we have to define the elements of what makes something heavy metal in order to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could fast forward to the mid 60s, and you know, I would say kind of, you know, obviously, you know, Black Sabbath made it kind of what it became in a sense. But, you know, you got bands like, you know, the Yardbirds, you got Cream, you got, you know, the Kinks, the Who, you know, and then even like, you know, if you think about like, go to the 68, the White Album, the Beatles, like Helter Skelter, that's like a heavy metal song.
Right.
You know, it's just like so aggressive. But I think, you know, combination of a lot of those bands, and then you had the US, you got Blue Cheer, you know, even Doors stuff, you know, you had the heavy organ stuff, and just the attitude, the darkness to the music and all that.
Yeah. Blue Cheer was kind of a big bang. And one thing about them that I don't think most people realize is that even in the 60s, they were detuning. Like they were tuned to D standard.
Yeah.
Everything was just that much thicker and
thick and heavy. And
so if we all agree, and I hope we do, that like Black Sabbath is kind of the official starting point of
heavy metal.
Definitely.
You know, you kind of got to figure like what are the elements that lead to that. So if you mentioned the Who, they have a super aggressive rhythm guitar player, plays the guitar like he's angry at it, crazy wild drummer, you know, charismatic, kind of howling front man, and then this bass player who just is unbelievable. So you combine like musicianship with a little bit of this could fall apart at any moment. You have distorted guitars like the Kinks, like you'd mentioned. You have exploration of dark themes, but all these bands were doing this stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like
Sometimes,
Shelter is a heavy song, but you'll never call the Beatles a heavy metal band. I kind of like it's taking those elements and sort of like stripping down all that happy stuff and just getting to the core stuff that's the gnarliest, which is where I feel like Cream or Blue Cheer, well, I guess both, Vanilla Fudge, kind of
Fudge.
they're kind of like that moment of
Vanilla Fudge. Yeah,
I said I'm getting hungry.
Getting hungry. All these things.
yeah, right.
You need some donuts.
Yeah,
with
it's
vanilla
kinda
fudge
weird.
and cream.
Yeah. Cactus later, but like,
Yeah.
but like you have this drumming's getting more technical. So there's like jazz in it still. A lot of drummers are jazzy, but they're learning to play a little back instead of ahead. And then the bass playing is the bass tone is getting heavier. It's following the guitar riff. The riff is really
And then you know, speaking of drums, and then you got fast forward, you got John Bonham comes out, and I think Bonham was kind of like the drummer. Well, I mean, I guess before him, Carmine. You know,
Carmine and Ginger Baker, just that kind of pounding.
Yeah, very heavy.
Too, another one. You know,
like it's not primitive, but it's primal. You know,
but Bottom made it like heavy. You know, so I think he kind of like he set the standards for, you know, big, massive drum tones, you know.
Yeah, he sounded big on the records, you know, when you heard it wasn't a thin, tinky, tunky kind of like you're hitting cardboard boxes or a Folgers coffee can. I mean, it's a big cannon going off, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's attributed to way he hit the drums, and then the other thing is Jimmy Page is his experience already in the studio,
right.
Zeppelin, how they managed to get those sounds out of the drums.
Yeah, well,
and then you mentioned, you know, we were talking about the Who, and you mentioned Pete Townsend. Like for me as a kid, the hearing Jimi Hendrix and the Who, like live at Leeds, I used to listen to that record like religiously as a kid from my father. And you know, it's the song "Young Man Blues" that's on there, and just the whole guitar tone of that, and hearing Hendrix guitar tone, like that was what attracted me to guitar. Like I was like, wow, that is just so nasty sounding and and heavy, you know.
And shame on the guitar podcast for not mentioning Hendrix sooner. About
well, we gotta go more chronologically. I was thinking, Hendrix because he's Hendrix. But we're starting with the 50s, and then we're kind of into the 60s.
Yeah, you're right.
Now the back end of the 60s, we've got obviously Hendrix, 67, 68, 69, Woodstock, and that really
and it all happened like very fast. Like if you listen to rock and roll in like 1956, 57, or a little sooner, and then you go to like what the Beatles do, you know, when they come out, which inspires just the idea that like kids in a neighborhood could start a band. To like where we wind up in 1970, where, you know, the heavy metal big bang is with the first Sabbath record. And then, you know, but in the 60s too, there's a lot of experimentation with lyrical themes that wasn't happening ever. Like, you know, you have, what's that? Black Widow, singing about satanic stuff. The Rolling Stones kind of getting in on some of that stuff.
Satanic Majesty's Request.
I know, it's like
great album, very psychedelic.
Again, like everybody was experimenting with everything.
Yeah, right. Anything goes. You know?
That's like one shade of the Rolling Stones, kind of like Helter Skelter's one shade of the Beatles. But it's like that shade. That shade, that dark shade gets taken, and somebody else says, "What if we just do a whole band where that shade is the main theme lyrically, and we have to match the sonics to go with it?" That's sort of where. Coven for sure. Yeah. So like all that stuff's happening at the same time, and you just have all this desire to seek out information that's countercultural, esoteric, maybe international. You know, a lot of, it's a lot of those bands from the 60s famously getting into like Eastern religions and philosophies and all that stuff kind of creeping in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Alex, you and Rick will remember this. So it's kind of interesting. We're talking about the Beatles. This is two separate conversations. What song were we talking about? We were talking about the different writings between John Lennon and Paul McCartney.
Yeah, just how different some of the songs can be.
It was really interesting.
And George,
what's that?
George's songs. Just
but
most of the albums, though, I remember this years ago, they would only let George only have a couple songs on a
like 2 songs.
They had to make John Lennon or Paul McCartney.
Yeah, I think he was allowed 2 songs or something per record.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about. Remember, we had a conversation.
Right.
You were talking about the different writing styles, like how dark John Lennon was.
Yeah.
And then like, what is wake up, get out of bed.
Right.
And then
on a day in the life, you've got it's very darker sounding with John Lennon and a lot of his songs, comparatively. And with Paul, it's always kind of, I just brushed my hair.
Yeah.
Totally. You always need to have a more optimistic, upbeat kind of attitude with his writing.
Well, and it's interesting how people
Lennon was the tortured soul.
Because you remember, I had a conversation with you, that exact conversation.
I remember that, yeah.
And then, like 2 days later, Alex and I were talking, having a similar conversation. He used the same exact analogy, same song, same everything.
Oh, wow.
It was like the same conversation.
Yeah,
with 2 different
that's
people.
great.
And he used the same song. I was like, wow, this is too weird.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just like the influence that kind of music had on everybody and how they interpreted it,
Yeah.
Because with Paul, you got "When I'm 64," and then with John, you got "I Am the Walrus,"
Right.
And so that kind of makes a lot of difference in where they're going as writers,
Well, yeah, John's
happiness is a warm gun,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
John's stuff is definitely also musically just sort of more esoteric, like the chords he would play and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But but to me, like the birth of like heavy rock, obviously came in started in the mid 60s, and led up to Sabbath, obviously.
Yeah.
And then after Sabbath, I would credit Judas Priest for kind of making it just completely metallic.
Oh yeah. Well, heavy metal was a pejorative until Judas Priest came along and said, "No, we're heavy metal." It's kind of like later, like punk rock was an insult. Like, it's just punk rock, and bands embrace it, and you're like, okay, So
they were the first to embrace it, because I think even to this day, like the Sabbath guys are just kind of like, they never consider themselves heavy metal. They're just a rock band. And Priest is kind of like welcomed that title and embraced it and kind of waved the flag.
Queen.
I mean, yeah. That's a little bit later, but that's 70s. But
the 60s was just so interesting for music in general. But again, I think a lot of what happens with heavy metal,
did they?
They did.
They weren't what they they were.
But right. They kind of evolved into what we know. Yeah. But that is true. They go way back.
But you take the technological changes of like amplification.
Sure.
And
Hendrix with the Marshalls, and and it's still to this day, it blows my mind how he got some of the sounds that he got, through that Stratocaster, through the Marshall, and
not many pedals either.
Yeah, like where did he come up with those ideas, like these space sounds and everything else? It's just totally insane.
He's enough to make you believe that aliens are real.
Yeah,
right.
It's like there are like artists, whether it's Michelangelo or Caravaggio or Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen, where like they just appear at a time and they're like, okay, we're going to just move time several decades ahead in like 5 minutes. Like before it was this and now it's that. And he's a big part of it. But, I think because he died so young, there's also the big mythos. He never had a chance to get old and make lame albums like Eric Clapton got the chance to do. So that helps his legacy. But like, you also have like
like Randy Rhoads too.
Yeah.
He was here.
Right.
You know,
Right.
both Hendrix and him were just here for,
But
just a couple of years, and that was it.
Fine.
And we're gone.
concurrent to that, though, you have Mountain, which basically comes out right after Cream.
Oh yeah, Leslie West, guitar tone, the whole. I mean, all three of them. Just,
I don't know. I mean, I got a couple Mountain records from that era, and they sound like explosive and fresh and just amazing right now. The guitar tone, sometimes you hear an old guitar tone on a record and you're like, that's dated. Like the sounds that band gets on some of those early records are sounds that like people strive for now. Myself,
they're kind of like the American version of Cream.
Up they were produced by. I think one of the members of Mountain was producing Cream's records.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I think you're right. I think maybe the bass player, maybe
Felix Papalardi, maybe is that his name?
Yeah.
So, but again, this is a great example of technology meeting a moment. So that on Mississippi Queen, he's playing through a Sun, and this is a guitar nerd podcast for those who are watching. So we're
right, guitar fanatic stuff.
He's playing through a Sun PA head, and there are no master volume amps to speak of really at that time, more or less. So he takes a PA amp, which has 4 inputs and 4 channels, and then a master volume to send to the PA system. And so he just plugs into like input number whatever and juices it so it's just totally distorted, then juices the master volume, and like now you have this ungodly guitar sound that in 1967 or whatever it was because before then it's fuzz pedals.
Yeah, and then he's got the Les Paul Jr. with the P90.
P90 pickups. Yeah,
which is something more like thick and organic about amp distortion than like a fuzz pedal. Fuzz pedals are kind of wild and quirky.
Yeah,
and this was just like this sounded like he was playing through something that was about to break.
Right.
And then that maybe somebody hears that and says, "What's that? How do I get that? I want a whole band that sounds like that."
Yeah.
Versus a moment in a song. Now, Mountain did sound generally quite heavy overall like that anyway, but like that's kind of, again, like I feel like from the Who and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, there's this sort of transition with Mountain, Cream, Blue Cheer, and then, you have the occult themes of like Coven and stuff like that, where it all happened super fast. And then all the psychedelic music that's happening at the time where it's sort of this anything goes, let's create
a shade of pale.
Yeah.
Maybe one of my favorites.
That's what I love about the late 60s and the mid, the early to mid 70s. It was just such a amazing time of experimentation in music and just taking everything, a step further, whether it was heavy music or progressive music or psychedelic, there's just so much amazing stuff going on. And I still to this day don't think there's been a better, time in music than that.
And record companies were just throwing money at it and saying, yeah, sure, let's try it.
Yeah.
These wacky kids are going to want to hear this stuff. So throw it out there.
I'm going to blow some of these out.
I'm pretty sure that Black Sabbath's first U.S. tour was supporting Mountain. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Oh yeah, maybe. Grand Funk Railroad,
Grand Funk Railroad, yeah.
Deep Purple.
We're
going to get there.
We're going to go down that road here.
Grand Funk Railroad got kicked off of Led Zeppelin's first American tour because they were blowing them off the stage.
Oh, wow.
They did like 2 shows with them, and they're like, get these guys out of here.
Yeah. That's
another
still
great example. Yeah.
Yeah.
On some tours, it's just like, all right, we're going to make sure that you can't go that loud. The headline is loud, and you can only go this many decibels.
That goes back to a crucial element, which is that sort of swagger and attitude of like, yeah, that band's cool, but we're going to do our thing. And I don't care that, like, I don't know about you, Alex, but like, I'm not necessarily like a competitive musician. I'm not
No.
like, but
With myself,
sure,
you
of
know,
course. But like,
you know.
I also don't get afraid to play with anybody else. Like nobody sounds like my band as good as my band does.
Mhm.
And so like,
That's
if
like-
you're opening for a bigger band, which, you know, I've had the fortune to do, you know, a few times, like you don't get nervous. You're just sort of like, well, they're here to see them. Well, maybe they'll notice us if we just, you know, do our best.
Mhm. Sure.
Right.
It just sort of not, you know, like a lot of those bands, those artists from that era were just also meeting the moment, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of before the record companies started throttling music, right?
Yeah.
Like putting everybody into this box and saying, "Hey, make everything sound the same like this."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Be artistic.
You
and
gotta have a
different.
hit song, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about the tours too that happened in the 70s, like say, for instance, you had Black Sabbath and Leonard Skinner touring together with Bob Seger, you know,
Yeah,
and you know, Yes and Black Sabbath, and you know, just so many, you know, a variety of different types of bands playing together. Because you know, those were the days where it was like you weren't like, you know, and it's kind of getting back to that, you know, kind of Jeremy would know, like, you know, in Europe, you go over and you play a festival, and you got like, you know, like I played with Leonard Skinner, you know, in
That's awesome, by the way.
France, you know, Hellfest. It's like, all right, it's us, Cannibal Corpse, Leonard Skinner, Def Leppard, you know, you know, it's you know, people are just more open to different stuff, you know, where the States have always kind of been like, okay, either you're this or you're that, or you're with this, you know, this group or whatever. But the 70s was still very very open to
they were still riding that wave of just that openness to new things. Because you also have like in the early 60s, which I think contributes, you know, is that early garage rock and psychedelic rock, you know, like 13th Floor Elevators or just or like and just all this kind of stuff where you can just tell when you listen to it, like these are just neighborhood guys and gals just jamming together, mostly guys back then, unfortunately. But like it was like they called it a garage band, and then you listen to it and you're like, yeah, it sounds like they're just guys who are jamming in a garage, and then they threw them in a studio and said, do that.
Yeah. MC5, the Stooges, you know, like
perfect.
A lot of that stuff that came out, you know, I think the first Stooges came out, what, 69, first record?
I think
and
so.
You think about how heavy that was. I mean, it's just very primitive and just like nasty, you know, they're like the attitude, Iggy Pop's vocals and you know, it's just that's a whole other thing too. And you know,
MC5 too, like they released the first record is a live album. They're like, we can't get this, we can't replicate what we do in a studio, so come to the show,
right?
Support us, and we'll make the record. And like, again, like just fuzzed out. You can hear the power of and the energy that I think the MC5 was very influenced by like a lot of the, you know, Motown kind of up tempo stuff as well. But they're like, let's take that and juice it up, put some rock and roll guitars in it. And next thing you know, somebody hears that and goes, well, I want to be louder than that. I want to be faster than that. It's the same evolution of heavy metal in general. I don't know if anybody could get any faster than the fastest people now. But at the time, it just was kind of evolving to that. And then when the first Black Sabbath record comes out, you have all these elements. You have the distorted guitar, the kind of groove-laden bass, and the dark lyrical themes, and then just like a drummer who hits the drums with finesse, but also just violence. Violence is another element while we're naming elements.
Yeah.
Replication of violence through the music itself. The pound, the vault, like just the sheer power of like taking over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who in your three opinions, who was the most extreme in the late 60s? Mid to late 60s?
Man, extreme.
like, or the hardest, the most extreme, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's a good. I guess.
I mean,
Stump
you know,
all three of
No,
you?
I want to make some comments in a second, but
I've heard it argued by all the people that were
Cream.
the shit that it would be Hendrix. You could say Cream, but then when Eric Clapton saw Hendrix, he was like, because he invited Hendrix to play with Cream, and then Clapton got off stage. And
I mean, I would say the Doors, actually, you know, because it was really edgy stuff, you know, and the lyrical themes and the dark element of the music. You know, it wasn't like, and there's some super heavy tunes like Robbie Krieger's guitar tone on some of the stuff that he did.
yeah,
Waiting for the Sun record, and you know, but you know, like there's, to get back to the attitude, you know, the Doors were touching on some pretty, you know, and the live performances, you know, of Jim Morrison.
having
it
a
was
larger,
very edgy, you know.
I'm noticing a theme here.
the larger
Eric Clapton.
okay.
larger than life front person, another key element.
Front
Like-
person.
Like a larger than life, typically it's not necessary, but when you consider like all of the great all-time metal bands across all subgenres, there's usually a charismatic person behind a microphone. Like that.
I would say the three real greats that come to mind would be, you know, Robert Plant, Ozzy, and Ian Gillan, you know.
Yeah.
You know, as far as front man and just, you know, the presence of the three of them too. They all had their own thing. They all sounded completely different than each other. And they all kind of, I think the three of them inspired what will become your stereotypical heavy metal front man, you know.
Oh yeah. And can we just
combination of those three.
Can we just give Ian Gillan the props he deserves? Because I think he is underrated in that respect. Like when you listen to
Absolutely.
Mark II Purple records with him and the kind of stuff that he was doing vocally, that kind of, I mean, other people were touching on it. Like Robert Plant was flamboyant, but Ian Gillan was just like, I'm going to soar like an eagle now. You know, like,
Yeah.
it's totally unique and super influential. Like when you hear Child in Time, you're like, oh, that's where those guys got that soaring.
Yeah.
The crazy
Yeah.
high
It was,
screams.
you know, maybe they got some of their moves from, you know, and some of their outfits from other people, but that disciplined version of a heavy metal hard rock singer versus the wild kind of free spirit, where it's like he was also very, to me, seemed like he was very disciplined singer, where everything had incredible intent behind it.
Yeah, I mean, if you you know, Deep Purple. I mean, you get the first two records with what was the original singer, Rod?
Exactly.
Yeah, Rod Evans. I think was his name.
Yeah,
Shades of Deep Purple, and what's it? Book of Talisman, I think, is the other record. And then
Mark
fast
one,
forward, you get the Ian Gillan, you know, and then and also Roger Glover coming into the band for In Rock. I mean, man, that's like the invention of speed metal. You know, if you listen to that, and it's just mean riffs like
Heavy,
Bloodsucker.
fast.
right.
Yeah, it's nasty, you know, and the musicianship, you know, was just top notch. Like, those guys were like unbelievable players, you know.
Right.
You know, if you compare, you know, Richie Blackmore to Jimmy Page, like on a technical level, it's you know, there's some major differences there, you know. Not to take away from either one of them what they do, but you know, Jimmy was more loose kind of player, and you got Richie's this very, you know, super intricate picking and just crazy kind of classical influence solos and arpeggios and all that kind of stuff.
I guess everybody in Deep Purple was sort of highly intentional now that you think about it. You know, like John Lord was a classically trained, you know, keys player. Richie Blackmore, just some of the techniques being borrowed from classical, which I guess is another element of that kind of music that the European side of things contributes to, because they had heard the blues, but they had grown up with proper classical music, and then that blending
Absolutely.
and sort of the grandeur of those compositions of classical being applied to a rock band format.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we can go back to the 1660s.
Yeah, right. Bach was the first heavy metal musician. Right?
Yeah. And that's a good example because, you know, to this day, when you know, the Europeans, the classical element is just so in the DNA. Because if you compare, like, you know, getting to the new wave British heavy metal and stuff like that. So if you compare like the British scene in the late 70s compared to the scene in LA that was happening, very different worlds, you know. And you know, the new wave British heavy metal guys was more of that kind of classical influence in the riffs, where LA was just more of this kind of good time, you know, on the beach kind of thing. It's like Van Halen. I always like say Van Halen was the Beach Boys meets Black Sabbath. You know,
that's great. Yeah, I love that. That's a great comment.
And Eddie was a huge,
you know, but very different to this day. You know, whether it's extreme metal or whatever. You know, or the rock bands. You know, British rock bands that are out today compared to the Americans. It's very different. You know, sound.
Going back to the late 60s for a second, too, the other band I like to throw in there, you know, they're not really technically called heavy metal very much, but the first King Crimson album, where you've got 21st century skits, you know, from Robert Fripp, that was nuts for 1969, you know.
Oh, super heavy. And I mean, and the stuff they did into the 70s, too.
Absolutely. Red, the Red album is incredible.
Yeah. And then Bill Bruford coming into the band.
Yeah.
And just, you know, wow. Yeah. King Crimson. I don't know why.
I can't believe it took you all 46 minutes to get into King Crimson.
Again, I was thinking it, though. I'm just kind of going for the evolution here, because we were in the 50s. We got into the 60s. We are in a little bit in the 70s. And that little spot, 69 going into the 70s, that's when the King Crimson catalog really started. So I wanted to just kind of drop that in there as we keep evolving with the way things
110% agree with you. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know why we didn't bring up King Crimson yet. And we didn't mention Zeppelin very much either.
No, I knew we were going to get there. I mean,
Zeppelin, because Zeppelin's kind of like a Greta Van Fleet knockoff, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm joking. You know what? I like saying dumb shit like that because people love eating me up in the comments.
Dude, Roger, you don't know what you're talking about.
Last week it was like, I'd like to see that guy play like Eddie Van Halen, and I was literally saying nobody could play like him. I like to say some dumb shit just to give people things to comment on.
I'll do that.
Zeppelin, and you know, I think we hit a little bit of this on when we did the Ozzy tribute, and we talked just a little bit about, you know, Zeppelin being around that same time. That Zeppelin had heavy stuff, but they also had a lot of not heavy stuff. That's the whole magic. Yeah. So, and I don't think they really wanted to be called a heavy metal band. You know,
no, they don't. I don't think they want to be, you know, have any kind of relation to it. But you know, they are as much. You know, I know they like to distance themselves from that label. But
yeah, I mean, Communication Breakdown, Immigrant Song, that's some pretty heavy stuff. I still love it to this day. I'm a big fan. But I mean, going back to that time, going back to a time machine to 1969, 1970, and hearing that when it was brand new, I mean, I'm sure people are going, man, that is some rocking stuff, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Jeremy, you and Rick would know that. Well, you probably all three. Like, is Jimmy Page really like one of the, not originators, but one of the first people that really started experimenting with different tunings, like Dadgad and all the weird stuff that he was getting into?
In my opinion, from a rock band perspective, a guy in a rock band writing just a bunch of rock songs, I would say, yeah, I would vote Jimmy. I mean, I know that there are people doing it like in folk music and in Celtic music. I realize that. Yeah. But in a rock and roll band, that's, you know, I think Page really was bringing in a lot of different types of tuning. Oh, yeah. Some had the Middle Eastern flavor, like on Kashmir. Yeah. Some had Celtic flavoring. Some had Delta blues flavoring. Sometimes you just drop that E down to a low D and you're doing the riff to Moby Dick, you know.
Yeah.
You got a heavy vibe on the. So yeah, we got to give Jimmy Page a lot of credit, I think, for that whole world.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that was one of the magic of Led Zeppelin, was just the diversity of the whole thing. that they were able to get away with so many different styles, you know, and I think that inspired a lot of bands later on. Like, you know, I don't want to be just this, you know, I want to be able to do all these things. And at the same time, to be able to, you know, go from the most heavy, aggressive stuff to the most folky, mellow stuff, and get away with it. And know that that's Led Zeppelin, you know.
Well,
From
heavy,
like Rain Song.
Right. That's a pretty big jump as far as the textures of the guitar sounds and the flavors and whatnot.
Yeah,
it's a testament to the kind of the wide array of influences he was pulling from, because you could tell by listening to that band that even though they started as like the new Yardbirds essentially, and they were like a blues rock band, it was like everybody in that band was bringing like this wide range of influences, and it seems like nothing was off the table, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And just that sense of like, whatever's going on right now, we're going to push it, which is what has always happened in metal music, is just like whatever is heavy in 1972 gets pushed in 1977 to some unimaginable thing that a few years prior nobody could have conceived, and so on and so on.
No, do you all think that? So it seems. So we have like the oldies kind of rock, and then we went into rock. But then it seems like we got into like this nebulous, like where everybody was doing acid kind of weird rock.
Iron Butterfly.
Like we kind of went there, and then we went back to hard rock again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's all intertwined, you know.
But we keep talking about like these late 60s artists and records, and the common theme we keep, you know, coming across is, can you imagine hearing that at that time and how crazy that would have been?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the drug scene was definitely a part of it. But again, just that willingness to experiment. And, you know, society prior to the 60s, from what I could gather, especially with, you know, segregation and religion being, you know, these fundamental things in the world at large, like to just say, let's knock all those doors down and just break all the rules all at once was kind of like a wild moment. It's almost like they were tearing down the walls of, you know, what was acceptable and saying, we're going to do something else now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. True. It's a musical progression or destruction, if you will.
Right. When it seems like, and you know, this is just as a musical listener, not, you know, I never dug into it, obviously, like you all have, but it seems to me like, again, I kind of grew up on oldies when I was younger with my parents and stuff like that. But it seems like when I got with my uncles, kind of rock, and my uncle was highly into experimentation. That's where we got into the more psychedelic stuff that we would listen to. And it seems like everybody kind of went like Beatles. Beatles went from She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah to
I Am the Walrus.
all over the place.
Well, I pretty much experienced that kind of evolution from my father, because my father was all about the 50s and the 60s stuff.
Exactly.
And, you know, the heavy stuff that he introduced me to was Hendrix and The Who and the Yardbirds and all that kind of stuff that he would play. And the first Led Zeppelin record he was a big fan of. But, you know, my uncle was the one that got me onto the 70s stuff. You know, he Sabbath and Deep Purple and Zeppelin and, you know, like even mid 70s Scorpions like Virgin Killer and stuff like that. And you know, and my father had a friend, I remember, it's kind of a funny story. His name was, I just remember he called him Marijuana Mike.
Why?
He's Marijuana Mike. And he looked at tribute band. Yeah, he looked like Bill Ward, this guy. He literally looked like Bill Ward back then. And I would go over with my dad and smelled like, and I didn't know, like, I just remember I had like this funny smell, like, oh, what is that? You know, this smells interesting, you know, a little funny. And
let the skunk
Black Sabbath would be playing, you know, like all the time in this guy's house. He was big, and I just like smelling weed and this Marijuana Mike. I didn't even know what marijuana was, but my dude, we're going to Marijuana Mike's house tonight, you know. And
that doesn't sound like a Frank Zappa song.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Frank Zappa.
Yeah, man. I just remember that it's just kind of funny that marijuana.
I didn't have a marijuana mic. We had, we've talked about the uncles before, the dads like Jan and Dean and the Beach Boys and all that. Then I went to the kind of acidy stuff with my uncle. I wasn't doing acid. I was young.
Right, just listen.
But then we got into the straight up marijuana mic music, James Gang, James Gang, Eagles and all that kind of stuff. So it seems like we jumped through the weirdness and then the James Gang stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll just call that marijuana mic music.
New term,
But I would say that heavy metal really, like a certain sound, really became something around between 68 and 69. In my opinion, is where it really kind of like, there was the magic really happened then, as far as like the heavy stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we talked about that led up to it. And people could argue that Jimi Hendrix is heavy metal. I mean, especially listen to the first Hendrix record. I mean, that's a heavy album, man. And
just that element of like the power chord through distortion.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's crucial at that time where people are like, oh, we have volume, but not everything we play sounds so good when it's just distorted. But this power chord thing does.
It works.
Always works.
A root and a fifth interval.
Yeah, it's great. So that's pretty key. But also, just Mountain, Cream, The Who, like all this stuff's happening all at once. Fuzzed out guitars 10 years after
Cactus,
Shred Blues. Wishbone.
And years after,
the concept of heavy, because heavy, in our minds, we think of it as like a sound because we're this evolved into heavy metal music and stuff. But the concept of heavy is like a mindset too, of like taking this idea, like creating a sense of weight, whether it be from volume or from lack of volume, but like an atmosphere. And then like that turns into, well, we have volume. We have Marshall stacks and high watt stacks and Sound City stacks. And we have distortion. We have fuzz pedals. We can move serious air. And, that leads to that moment where we're all going, you're not talking while we're playing. And if you don't like it, you can leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess, you can determine, or heavy is determined by the era also.
Right.
Like some of the stuff that they were playing in the 50s, our great grandparents or grandparents would have said was heavy. So not by today's standards,
right?
Though.
But not like that rock and roll music. And they're like, that was just the craziest stuff ever back in 1958. You know?
I remember the first time somebody was like, yeah, Blue Cheer. They're like one of the first heavy bands. And I was younger. And, by then I'm listening to like Slayer and all this heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm listening to them like, this isn't heavy. What are you talking about? But then as I learn more about music and sort of learn how it all evolves, now I go back and I go, actually, this is quite heavy.
Right.
Right. But at the time, hearing that, again, back that recurring theme, like imagine hearing that at the time. Like imagine you go to like see, I don't know, like one of those weird bills in San Francisco. And it's like Joni Mitchell and, Neil Young or something like that. And then like Blue Cheers on the bill. There's like all this sort of kind of clean guitar, psychedelic rock.
Right. Yeah.
Very good and song oriented. And then you get like Blue Cheer just says, hi, everybody.
Yeah. Turn it to 11.
Yeah. Right.
And then,
easily you wouldn't have to hear
Neil Young. I mean, even Neil Young later down the line, he turned things up a bit too, and there's a nastiness to some of the stuff that he did later on. So maybe Blue Cheer rubbed off on Neil Young a little bit to do some of the nasty guitar stuff that he did.
And you got to wonder if Blue Cheer was just like, I like this Eddie Cochran song, and I thought it was heavy growing up. Like, we want to do something heavy. That's a heavy song. If you listen to the Eddie Cochran version of Summertime, you're like, it's not heavy. It's good, but it's like not what you would define as heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned
I think the term heavy comes from attitude first. I
Yeah.
think that, you know, the heavy attitude. It's
Attitude, just like pushing power through the speaker.
yeah. It's like you watch a movie and you're just like, oh man, that was heavy. You know? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
So I know Neil Young would have been more into the 70s, but where does he fit in it? And Alex, I would have him in the Yngwie Malmsteen category in my book. Neil Young. Yeah, he's right down there at the bottom of my list. I hate Neil Young. I'm just wondering, Norton Utility. Are we getting him?
I don't know that.
Okay.
He's nowhere, right? He's nowhere in the rock scene.
He's nowhere because he's part of that world of like songwriters who are influenced. Because I bet like we all have influences well outside of our, you know, bread and butter stuff that people know us for doing.
Yeah.
And like the drummer in Black Anvil, Rafe, was like he's a huge Neil Young fan, but he's also like really into like all kinds of other. Some of the most extreme shit I've ever heard was turned on to me by him. So,
yeah.
But in terms of like, forging the sound and the power and lyrical themes, I don't know that he plays in. I do want to give honorable mention to proto metal band Dust from New York City. I wore this shirt.
All right. Dust. I remember that.
Yeah, so that's kind of like 71, 72, I guess. But
Kind of like Budgie, right? Another one from that, like, you know, great heavy band from 71, 72 era, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think
I wasn't alive during that time. I don't know.
I was a little
underrated heavy rock band.
So, yeah, you're alive. You're alive. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned Budgie, Rick, because I definitely consider them one of the most underrated heavy bands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, for those of us who don't know who the hell they are, who are they?
They're from Wales, actually, part of United Kingdom.
Yeah.
And they had a lot of albums out in the 70s, or going back to about 71, I think. I think their debut was
first one, I think 71. What was the bass player singer? Burke something Burke.
Yeah. They were like, what, a three-piece. They had the trio thing. So, like, you know, obviously, like Rush really took off with that big three-piece power trio thing there in 74, 75. But Budgie kind of had their thing going on with it there in that early part of the
Sure. Yeah, I agree. And kind of similar to Zeppelin, because you had like the heavy thing, and then they'd have this Beatle-esque song.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, good, great commentary. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But yeah, Budgie, another very.
Their name was Budgie.
Budgie. Yeah. What's your name? Budgie. Or Budgie.
Roger, you might know Budgie songs as covered by Metallica.
Bread Fan.
Oh, okay.
Crash
Yeah, Bread Fan was the big one Metallica covered, and that was a Budgie.
Crash Course
72 or 73, I believe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's right, Metallica. Yep. Yeah.
So who's next?
And you know, there's an example of a band like Metallica that exposed a lot of bands to a lot of kids that, you know, didn't know, you know, whether it was punk like the Misfits or you know, or Budgie, you know, stuff like that.
I bought my first Misfits album because I would see Metallica wearing their T-shirts, so I just assumed they had to be cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people I know have kind of thought of that.
And Budgie, I get into later because of that. UFO, because every magazine interview with Kirk Hammett, he's like, Michael Schenker.
Yeah.
Who the hell's Michael Schenker? Then one day I get a UFO disc. I'm like, oh, that's Michael Schenker.
Yeah, right.
Copy.
Yeah. And well, you know, that's a little bit later, but you know, Schenker, I mean, wow, the guitar tone and all, like that Phenomenon record, the first record he did with them, like, who had a guitar sound like that?
Yeah, you know? That was a chapter once we get into Michael Schenker.
Wow.
You know, so that's that European classical influence, kind of
totally
the diatonic versus the pentatonic approach.
Yeah. And the picking, very precision picking. It's not this thing, you know.
Well, there's
very percussive.
Era of American musicians, it really valued, you know, the attitude was there first, and then most of those artists, technique-wise, were a little loose or a little like kind of in and out of the pocket, you know. Mm-hmm. And then once you get like to that, especially when, you know, like the Germans get involved or the Swedes, like there's like this disciplined approach to the instrument that, like, is outside of what perhaps a blues bass player would.
Uli Roth, you know, it's like
great example.
Just picking technique. There's a very formal musical training sort of aspect to what they're doing.
You know, the guy I would say would be the first to kind of be that disciplined was Richie Blackmore.
Blackmore,
I
I'm gonna go there too.
Like the guy that spawned Schenker and Uli and stuff like that. Even though, you know, obviously you listen to Uli, you hear, you know he loves Hendrix, you know, but
Sure.
But Richie Blackmore was just very percussive and you know, intricate, you know, solos and the riffs and all that. And I don't think there was anybody quite like Richie.
Not that I can think of. Maybe Brian May has an element of that, but I guess he's later too.
And that's a little bit later too.
Yeah, I would kind of put that. I mean, I'm a huge fan, but definitely kind of in the next little corridor of it. But that early 70s, like 70, 71, 72, 73, you know, Burn from Deep Purple, Highway Star. You know, you've got the cycle of fourth progressions, almost like Bach would have used in classical music, but done in a hard rock kind of way.
Yeah, like Blue Cheer wasn't rolling with triads, you know.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
They're basically, it's like blues, you know, pumped up on.
Yeah, it's like high volume blues, like, which is what Cream kind of set out to be.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and Mountain as well, and you know,
somebody once said blues on steroids. That might have been like a David Lee Roth quote or something.
Yeah.
About, years ago, you know, Roth always had these great one-liners, but I think he said something. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, because a lot of those blues records that influenced early heavy metal, like a lot of the blues artists, they were a little loose on their instrument, which is part of the kind of cool slitheriness.
Of
the sound. And then when you got into, you know, the post Beatles version of that, where we're playing in rock bands with amplifiers now, it's for some reason it just all got tightened, you know.
Well, you know what? I'm going to have to say, even we can go on forever with this, but I mentioned Richie Blackmore, but Jeff Beck, you know.
I
mean, maybe I should refer to him as first, you know, because it's just how perfect he played. You know,
perfect, but also like explorative and very esoteric. Like, like what can this thing do that nobody's done before?
Yeah, and he constantly reinvented himself until the day he died, pretty much. You know.
Yeah,
right. So it's kind of like you know how he switched to playing with his fingers because it wasn't a challenge anymore. Kind of like compared to my father with fishing, where he stopped. You know, he switched to fly fishing because regular fishing wasn't a challenge to him anymore.
Well, that's what playing guitar is for us, I think, where it's just like everything we do, we get to a point where like, what can I do to make this more frustrating?
Let's try guitar into the discussion. So we talked about the music and the rock of the late 60s, early 70s, predominant guitars in that era.
There's not many, you know?
Right.
Yeah. You only had, you know, Gibson was big, of course, with the Les Paul, the SG, and then the Fender Stratocaster, obviously Hendrix, and then Richie Blackmore, early 70s, Deep Purple.
You got the Gretsch too, you know.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Those were kind of the Rickenbacker, I guess, was, you didn't see that. Yeah, there were what makes a guitar suitable for heavy metal is like typically they're not going to be hollow because there's already too much feedback to harness as is. So I guess it's the Strat to me is great for the ergonomic aspect of being able to play things that people wouldn't have imagined playing on, say, like a jazz box.
Right.
And then the Gibsons with the humbucker, but even before that, because like Tony Iommi didn't use a humbucker till like Sabotage. It was all P90s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Kind of like higher output, sort of pushing the amp with pedals, or well, there weren't really pedals back then. Like, what can we do to just crank this? You had the treble booster, which is probably one of the most
with his Laney, you know.
Well, like the treble booster is probably one of the most underrated pieces of guitar technology that kind of brings us to the high gain world. It's like the bridge between, the jangle to the Mount Olympus of doom guitar tone that we all love now.
Yeah.
Yeah, guitar wise, yeah, I mean, think of who all the great what all the great players are playing. It was Les Pauls, Strats.
Yeah.
That's kind of
And I
it.
think the Les Paul really started to become kind of popular probably towards the late 60s too. Where those guys like started picking up and they discovered the humbucker, and the fatness of the humbucker, like Eric Clapton playing the Les Paul
and in that
Jimmy
era,
from a Telecaster to the Les Paul.
yeah.
I remember the one with Clapton. It was really the Blues Breakers album with John Mayall that had the humbucking pickup in the Les Paul through the Marshall. I don't think it was a stack; it was a smaller Marshall, I think.
It was
but that was that tone that was predating Cream. Actually.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's right.
18-watt combo. Yeah, it was like
correct. Yes,
it was what they now call the Blues Breaker Marshall.
Yes.
Well,
and
even earlier than that, we talked about B.B. King and Chuck Berry.
Yeah,
so 335 would have come in.
Yeah. In fact, me and Roger we spoke about that today because I was saying how, I got to get a 335. I need one. I have to have one.
Hey, but fun fact about B.B. King, I'm a big blues fan. I love, B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, Billie Jean King, everybody there in the all the kids. And B.B. actually played a Telecaster before he got to the 335. If you look at early pictures of him, like in 1952, 53, he actually had a Tele that he used. And then it got to like the 57, 58. Then he switched over to the Gibson 335, which obviously became his trademark.
Yeah, I mean, early 50s, Gibson doesn't have really much to offer an electric guitar player outside of big woofy jazz boxes.
Like if you're a jazz player, right?
Yeah. Jimmy Page too.
That's right. Jimmy Page, first Zeppelin album, a lot of Telecaster on that record.
Yeah.
All the electric stuff, I think, was all Tele on Led Zeppelin 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just discover like something's not enough for you, and you like again, it comes to the thickness. I think the humbucker is another essential development that leads to heavy metal being, kind of possible beyond what it was before. The P90's got high output, but like just that round bottom end and that sort of smoothed off top end that allows you to go even louder without getting that piercing sound and just developing this thick wall of guitar that we all love, which is, I think, starts with Clapton. Because I also know from interviews and stuff that when he did that Blues Breakers album, he had the amp cranked, and the recording engineers at the time were like, "What do we got to do to get you to turn this down?" There's my wife's feet back there. What do you got to do to get this turned down? And he's like, "I'm not turning it down. This is how it sounds when I play it live." And so it was kind of the first time a lot of people heard like guitar sound like that extra distorted from the amp just being cranked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you probably couldn't do that and control it as much with like single coil pickups. Like I have a guitar with P90s in it even. And when you get super loud, it's like you get the hum and there's just like a jangle there that like when you're trying to be thick and muscular, it's not quite there the way a humbucker is.
Well, in the earlier versions of the P90s and even the cheaper versions, they're just so noisy.
Yeah.
Right.
They're very noisy.
A lot of buzz and noise.
They're hot pickups. Like they are.
They are
hotter than a PAF if you measure.
Definitely.
Which is part of their charm.
It's funny you mentioned, Jeremy, that you said, Tony Iommi didn't start using a humbucker until Sabotage. And I thought about it for a second, and I'm like hearing the guitar tones on Sabotage. And you're right. Like you can hear it. You can hear that it's like a humbucker. That's probably when he got like the John Birch guitar.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's just got
24 frets and all that. And that's another thing nobody really did back then. Having a 24 fret guitar.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, you can hear it. You can actually hear the humbucker
Yeah.
like Systems of the Universe.
That's
It's like you hear that tone.
And think of all the Doom fans that have bought SGs with humbuckers all these years trying to capture that sound, only to later.
Yeah, and it was
like that, you know.
Yeah,
I like everybody thinking Jimmy Page used a Les Paul on Led Zeppelin 1.
Yeah,
How do I get my Les Paul to sound like that? It's like,
and listen to that tone on a Telecaster,
right.
nasty, It's like,
And he didn't really use the Marshalls in the studio either. Those were just for
correct. Yeah,
guitar amps back then, like they were just part of a PA system. You just plugged it in, and it was loud, so it worked. Like everybody knows,
box or something like that. Maybe he was using.
Yeah, he was using like little Supros and stuff a lot of the time because the microphone doesn't care how loud the amp is. I mean, I care how loud the amp is, but
it's funny. This is fast forward a bit, but I thought about something you're saying, like the little things that they used, and I know like Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age and previously Caius. Like I know some of those early Queens records. He was just using some like piece of shit small gorilla amp because he like he would just like do his rhythm guitars and this like 10-watt gorilla or something like that, but to get a certain tone,
just a dirty cool sound,
I forget what UFO record it is, but there are songs where Michael Schenker did a bunch of the rhythm stuff on a pig nose amp or something.
I think I read that was Obsession. The Obsession album had a lot of that.
Oh,
yeah.
I read that years ago. It's just one of those things that stuck in my brain that he was using just small things cranked on some of the tracks on that album.
Yeah, just to cut it because it's an effect. Because again, like the microphone in the recording studio monitors, they're just receiving information. They don't care if it's 100-watt this or a 5-watt that.
Yeah,
you can manipulate those with mic placement or other tricks to make them sound huge anyway. So
yeah. And that was the beauty of recording on tape, it's like,
right.
I would love to do a record these days that it's just, on 2-inch reel-to-reel tape and mix it like we used to do it, but it's just financially, it's just, you got to have a lot of money to go in the studio and do a record like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we romanticize tape, but we all forget how many times you got to rewind.
Oh yeah. And I remember, like my first recordings, doing the mix and just like, okay, ready, here it comes. Ready,
yep.
1, 2, 3, 4. Now hit the delay on this and like turn the knob real quick on the board and but that's a whole other art form in itself,
Oh, I learned in recording school how to edit 2-inch tape, like because they would do that too. Like they would have like 5 drum takes on one reel, and then you'd pick out the chorus from one, the verse from another, and you're literally cutting like yards and yards of you're pulling yards and yards of tape because it's 30 inches a second.
Yeah.
And you cut the tape, somehow find a way to hang that somewhere, but don't lose it in case they change their mind, and then like tape the part from another song onto it. And then when I go into Logic and don't have to do any of that at all, I'm pretty sucked. But the tape is very forgiving. So I like that you can hit it hard and it kind of sounds cool. Whereas if you hit, these digital interfaces hard, it doesn't sound cool. It doesn't even sound distorted. Like sometimes distortion is unpleasant, but in a cool way, but typically it's not.
And I know you all aren't talking about this kind of tape, but jumping back in time, I saw on the news just this morning, cassette tapes are making a comeback.
I've been hearing that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they did.
Like the vinyl come back, but now speaking of rewinding,
because cassette's been back for a little while now. So that's
I didn't know that. It was on the news this morning.
Well, when Sanhedrin put out our demo, we released it on Bandcamp digitally, but we wanted something to sell at shows, so we made a cassette tape of it. It was more of a novelty.
I remember that now. Yeah.
It was more like we just did it like to have something at the merch table to get $5 out of people, and then we only made 100 of them, and so now they're kind of like amongst our fans, they're collectibles.
Oh,
So it's really more like that than it is like I really like the audio quality. Although I will say, like, there's certain eras of music where I do like how it sounds on cassette. Like if you put a 80s Slayer record on, or like any of that old thrash stuff on a cassette, it just has this sheen to it that takes you back. It kind of adds to the, what you're trying to get out of that moment when you're playing that kind of music.
Right.
Yeah.
Really weird the things that are coming. I had a
cassette player again
here one time with a Sony Walkman from the 80s.
Wow.
It had
All
been
right.
restored. It was an actual Sony Walkman.
I remember that.
And he had a cassette in it.
So Roger, I know you're a fan of the band. So Paul, my friend Paul from Blood Incantation, he's got a couple solo records that he did, and he only did them on cassette. So I have them. They're sitting over here. I still have never heard them yet because I'm sorry, Paul, but eventually I'll get to it when I get a cassette.
He didn't even.
Are you gonna? You're gonna have to listen to them in your Pacer.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, it's interesting how like I've always preferred vinyl over anything. To me, it's just like you have to sit down and listen to the whole record. You can't. I mean, you can like pick up the needle and skip and all that, but there's something about that, and it was just the sound of vinyl. Like I remember for years I didn't listen to the vinyl, and I put on Dio Last in Line, and the drum sound on that record, like when you listen to the vinyl version compared to the CD or something like that, it just like reaches out to you. It's just like it's unbelievable sounding. Listening to the analog tape and the drum tones. That you got.
And I think I once in a while we talk about this, but so I am kind of new to Spotify. Alex got me onto Spotify, and one thing that I miss is it kind of like you miss the album. Like Van Halen one. Let's use that as a good example. When one ends ends, I know what song's coming on next. Like it's already it's playing in my head already.
Yeah.
And I think you lose that on Spotify. Like it just kind of does this weird shuffle.
Oh, the shuffle.
When you're listening, if you're listening to an album, cassette, whatever, you're listening to it kind of in its entirety.
Well, it's deliberate. Yeah.
And that's the thing about going back to the, because the music that I got into first was from my father in the early 70s, listening to his 60s records. And, you like the whole piece is a part of it. The artwork, you open up the vinyl, you look at the lyrics or, and then listening to the record, it really took you on an adventure. And I think that has gotten lost in the modern age with kids where they're just like, all right, I'm just going to click on this song. I'm going to fast forward. And you don't even look at the artwork, and just having the vinyl there to just kind of like take it all in. And
I think kids right now, like if you want to say the 16 to 22 crowd, whatever, journalists call that generation, they're kind of rebelling against like all the instant gratification stuff that I could see. Like they're buying film cameras, taking pictures with film. So they're more deliberate. I have a guitar student who he just left for college, but his first big gear purchase was like a disc delay, like tape echo unit.
Oh, wow.
Because he just likes the mechanics of it and how like it's like I was like, they make digital emulations of all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, this is like 60s stuff. He's like, I know, but I like this. I think it's cooler. I like that it's spinning and I could see it spinning and I could hear it spinning and all this stuff. And like a lot of them aren't on social media.
Yeah.
And because I think they're seeing like their millennial parents, and I'm an elder millennials, but I'm not a parent, like hooked to the phone, grandparents hooked to the phone, instant gratification. Spotify, frankly, audio wise, sounds like butt when you compare it to a CD or vinyl.
Yeah.
And I think they're just kind of there is a pendulum swing reaction to all that stuff. Whereas I think the kids I know, like I got a 22-year-old nephew, he's similar, like they want stuff slowed down and kind of to experience things the way they were probably meant to. Like when I make a full-length album and we're doing the track sequencing and all this stuff, making the artwork, it's with the ultimate intent of somebody holding the vinyl, reading the lyrics, and following along.
Right.
Yeah.
Most people won't do that, but that's what we're doing. You know,
You're definitely right about that. Even like to bring up Blood Incantation, those guys will go on tour, and they have like all four of them have like the biggest vinyls, like collection you've ever seen. And every town they usually go to, they try to find some small record store that they can go in and spend hundreds of dollars on every day and buy shitloads of vinyl. So you're right. There is like a younger generation that that appreciate all that. And it's just like live music. Live music is still alive and well. People want to go out and experience that. And they want to hear that power.
It's probably it's even more important now with all the ways that technology has afforded us. It's a double-edged sword of the convenience, but also the sort of all the ways that it kind of can isolate people. And then there's like this yearning to be like, well, a great way to unisolate myself is to go out to an event, like a musical event or whatever you're doing, a sporting event, and just kind of realize that, the whole world is not available just in your office where your computer is.
Right. I think that, and we live that. My daughter, I thought it was odd. You mentioned Polaroids. She's 22 now, so this has been a few years ago. One year for Christmas, she's like, I want one of those new Polaroid cameras.
Yeah.
Look at it. It's weird because our generation, we're like, God, they sucked when we had.
I remember back in the day.
But then these kids, like you said, Jeremy, they want all this low tech stuff. They think it's cool, and we're buying Polaroid cameras. And we're thinking they're cool.
Go back to 1977.
And she was in the vinyl. She was.
Think of like all the photos on all the phones that don't work anymore that you have that you'll never print, you'll never put in a book, and you'll never show somebody. And I think maybe these younger folks are kind of wising up to that. Like, no, I want to take one picture and then know that I have it versus going taking 100 pictures a day of everything you see. What are you going to do with it all? It like slows you down and makes you more deliberate, like listening to a vinyl record, because there's that process of carefully putting it on the platter, and then sitting with it. And you can't go too far because you got to flip it over in 25 minutes,
Right. Hey, Cheat said he had a tape converter to play cassettes on an 8-track.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
I didn't know that there's such a thing.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I didn't know there was that. I do know that they had the cassette that, before CDs were in everything. Now CDs are nothing. You had the cassette that you put in that played your CD.
Well, the 8-tracks.
Oh, I had that.
Because you had to like when
the car adapter.
When you skip like the tracks or something, it would always from what I remember, because I had quite a few 8-tracks as a kid, and I used to listen to them a lot, like The Who and Kiss and stuff like that. Sabbath I had on 8-track and Alice Cooper or whatever. But so it would like skip, if you guys remember, it would like skip in between the songs sometimes. It's like strange.
Well, and it's just kind of weird. And I know this isn't the history, but it sort of kind of is in the mediums that we listen to it on. But I can remember my sister-in-law when music was first put on disc, they called it Laserdisc.
Laserdisc.
And I can remember her saying, "Oh my God, you've got to listen to this. I mean, it's so perfect." Yeah. And now we're into Spotify and we're saying, okay, it is perfect, but it's just too perfect. We don't want that anymore.
Yeah. Well,
we want those little imperfections.
That's why I don't like a lot of modern rock production. So I was visiting some family, and one of my relatives, he's driving the car. He's got satellite radio on one of these modern rock, heavy metal, new metal stations. And I'm listening to it going because I'm pretty familiar with engineering and stuff. I went to recording school. I've, done a lot of demos, made a lot of records. And I'm listening to this and just picking out all the like elements of this where the humanity has been stripped from it.
Right.
Right. The soul gone.
Yeah, the sound of the drums, you could tell they've been like sampled instead of, and then like the fact that everything lines up to the click track perfectly. Because I play in Sanhedrin, we record to a click, but my drummer Nate knows like he kind of wiggles around it. There's still like this feel to it and stuff, but like just the kind of perfection of it all, I found to be very unappealing. Whereas if
I agree.
Yeah,
but the click really isn't it. I used to be afraid of the click a long time ago. I was just kind of like, I record with the click, you lose the whole feel of everything, and it's just a guide is all it is, and it's a good guide to have. It doesn't, you don't lose the chemistry of
but these
Boogie, right?
But yeah, that's right.
His click's name is Boogie. That's his drummer.
The thing is, like,
right. Yeah, we're going to shout with the Cactus Jack band.
Yeah.
When you use like the sampled drums and stuff, you can take in the recording software, you can line it up perfectly to the grid.
Yeah.
Where, as opposed to having some stuff be behind or ahead of the beat, where you can't really tell while you're listening to it, but then you see it on the grid. Oh, it's a little off. I got to slide it over. And then suddenly everything is so perfect that it sounds like a computer played it.
Yeah, I mean, with like all the classic Led Zeppelin albums have lost some mojo if they had made everything go to straight to a click, instead of just kind of feel the pocket the way they did on those classic albums.
Right. Yeah. And to Alex's point, like I'm not against using a click. I've made quite a few records using a click, but it's kind of the responsibility of the band or the drummer to like not let the click track be the groove. It's there to guide the groove and make sure that, because we in Sanhedrin, we even have our drummer has a click in his ear live for most of our songs. And I find it most helpful because live, sometimes you start playing too fast.
Yes.
You think it's the right tempo. And I'll be like,
I've done it.
This feels slow, but then I'm like, well, it can't be slow.
Yeah. Sure.
I was just going to ask.
I guess I don't know if anybody else has got anything to add.
I did. Going back for a second, I want to add on Roger's question about the guitars that were used, especially because a lot of our focus tonight's been the 60s going into the 70s, and we'll do some future episodes where we go into later years and decades, of course. So, but one thing I wanted to throw out real quick. So how about players like, the two come to mind, they started on one guitar and then moved heavily into another. For example, Eric Clapton playing Gibsons with Cream. Then he becomes a Strat player once he gets to 1970 or 71. Jeff Beck, Les Paul player there with the Jeff Beck group. But once he got into like the Wired era, he was mainly going over to the Strat, and then of course the Strat became his main, weapon of choice, so to speak. So I just want to throw that comment out there for what it's worth.
Richie Blackmore, Deep Purple Mark I, he's playing a 335.
Right, I was going to go there too. Yeah, he used a Gibson, the 335, and obvioally went over to that Strat. And then that really took off there in the early 70s for him.
Wyoming Strat to the SG, Jimmy Page, Telly to the Les Paul, and I think it's just those guys were early in the game, and you're kind of you're finding what's your comfort zone, as a player, I guess too.
Right.
Like Jeremy, I know you're predominantly you're a Les Paul guy. Rick, you play like a lot of Strats, I guess, and stuff.
Well, it's a combination because I do play with a lot of my main band is Cactus Jack, but I also freelance with other groups in Central Virginia. So I do have a good Strat collection that I use. I do have some Les Pauls, but gigging wise, and I also use Paul Reed Smith guitars for a lot of the stuff. They're so versatile,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think those guys are just trying to find their voice and what was comfortable to them.
Well, some of it's an accident.
Personally, I like different guitars for different things.
Yeah, I agree. Same here. Yep.
Well, I know on the first Sabbath record, Tony Iommi's main guitar was the Strat.
Yeah.
But they were only tracking that one day, and something happened with the Strat, like the pickup.
Wicked World. That's the only one. The only song.
And so he recorded the rest with his backup guitar, which was an SG.
SG, yeah.
Okay.
And Michael Schenker. He was a Les Paul guy first, and then
Right.
Yeah.
his brothers, Flying
Had
V,
the
was
Flying
hanging
V,
around
yeah.
and he was like, oh, where you been all my life? Kind
That
of
turned out to be the right move.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good for him, I would say.
Yeah, it's just funny how fate like lines that stuff up. Like,
Yeah.
And,
like,
and if
why
to
do
get into
why
the,
do you
we
play
were
that
talking
guitar?
about the humbucker and all that stuff. It's like the different shapes have different sounds. A Flying V
Yeah.
has a unique sound. The Les Paul has its sound. SG, it's Fender Strat. They all have their own unique characteristics about them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Own that they
Yeah, I got my first V like within the last 2 years, the Jackson Rhodes. And as soon as I started playing it, I was like, oh, that's the V sound. You could just feel it.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
certain things where I'm like, I just started playing like Scorpions riffs and Accept riffs. And
Right,
like,
exactly.
you can't even explain how or why it is. It's just like there's certain notes on the guitar, certain parts of the guitar's register where you hit a chord and you're like, it just reacts a certain way. And you're like, oh, that's the V sound, I guess. Well,
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned Accept, and I didn't know this for years. So Wolf Hoffman, those early Accept records, even though he played the V live, he recorded them with his Fender Strat because he was comfortable with the Fender Strat.
Really? Did not know that.
There's a lot of,
there's
a lot of that trickery in the studio. I've done it because like I'm mostly a Les Paul guy, and I would say on between the Black Anvil and Sanhedrin records I've done, 90% of it's those. But there's a couple songs where I'll play one layer is the Les Paul, one layer is a Strat, because I want a certain sort of articulation to cut through the thing that I'm talking about.
It complements each other really well.
And again, the microphone,
having two players play, because it makes it bigger,
Yeah, and the microphone only knows that it sounds good. And so, and you can make a Strat or a Tele really kind of cut through a mix in a way that sometimes maybe your more higher output guitars, can't get across. Like there's just certain guitars that, for a musical moment won't do it as well as the other thing that you would never play live in a million years, but it doesn't matter because recording, you can do whatever you want and it's forever.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
That's a whole other discussion.
Right.
Oh,
A lot of you can take deep dives into some other rabbit holes and some future episodes. A lot of interesting subtopics here. Amps, definitely.
Oh, I like the Vox. I used to have one just like
so Alex, I had a red Les Paul Studio, which you may have seen, maybe didn't.
I played that guitar. I have.
Yeah. Well, that turned into the Vox.
Oh, okay.
I traded a guy around here. It's
nice.
I'm glad I did because, it's a very satisfying, fun instrument.
The red one was really beat up, if I remember correctly, right? Is that the one?
No, that's the black one. The black one.
But the red had some problems too, didn't it? I remember picking it up, you showing it to me.
It was weird. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah. It just didn't connect.
Yeah, exactly. So I put it on Facebook. I said no trades, and this guy goes, "Well, I know you said no trades, but
yeah."
And then he's like, word. And I was like, "How about this?" And I was like, "Well, shit, actually."
you got to have a Vox in your collection, So
oh yeah, no, it's awesome. I've always wanted one ever since I played one, long time ago. I used to work at a guitar store, and then Sanhedrin used to rehearse at a backline rental company. So every time I'd go there, I would just pick a different amp combo and I was vibed with them. So yeah, they're great. They're great with Strats and Teles. Like play fast. The notes just jump out on them.
Which box?
Great clean tones you can get out.
It's the AC30 and it's got the Alnico Blue speakers, which are like
oh wow. Okay.
Does it have that little weird Vox hiss to it?
Mine doesn't.
I had one that hissed all the time, and they were like, "That's a Vox thing."
I had when I got it, it had a couple small issues, so I took it to my amp guy here, and he replaced a bunch of. He kind of modded it in the sense of like replacing cheaper pots with better ones and so forth.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
he hissed it.
I guess so. I have a Sound City amp from 1973 that has a hum, and that's a design flaw thing.
Yeah.
Like no tech can fix it because apparently the head box is too small and the transformers are too big, and their electromagnetic fields sort of create this hum that you can't get rid of.
Oh.
Character.
Yeah.
Right.
So you may
Now we're really getting into nerdy stuff. People are gonna be like, I got my head explode right now.
So you mentioned the Rhodes, and I talked about this guitar a few episodes ago when I was complaining about my LTD compared to the Edwards. So that Edwards Rhodes that I mentioned, white with the pinstripes on it, very nice guitar. If anybody's interested, it's for sale in the Fredericksburg area. No, not me. I know it's here. It's in there. I've already had it on my bench, and it was. Man, that's the one I was complaining about, the Japan version of LTD, the Edwards. Is so much better than what I just got in my LTD. And he has it up for sale. He found that he's not a V person, but it's a good deal if anybody's looking for a good guitar.
Yeah, from what I understand, I don't have experience with the Edwards guitars, but it's kind of like in between LTD and you're getting an ESP.
Well, the price wasn't in between; it was right on the mark. That's what I paid for LTD.
I have a friend who has an Edwards Les Paul copy, and it's great.
There's one of those for sale. It's weird. Never heard of Edwards before that guitar came in here, and now I know of two
of them.
There's one up in Rockville, Maryland. If anybody's looking, it's a white Les Paul Edwards.
Yeah, they're in Japan. You can get away with some of the copyright stuff a little bit more.
Yeah,
because you don't sell it outside of Japan, so that's like their Japan only imprint. So if you get one in the States, somebody brought it over from there.
It's like the ESP has the Navigators. So they're basically vendors and Gibson copies, and everybody swears that they smoke any Gibson custom shop.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a high bar, sir.
Yeah.
Well,
I have production Gibsons. I have custom shop.
They are expensive. The Navigators are like, big money.
The custom shop Gibsons are like, they might as well be their own brand because they're just extra super duper.
Yeah.
Mine's nice.
Yeah.
And they're priced accordingly, unfortunately.
That's good.
Yeah, it's and it's one more little guitar thing. So the pink guitar is gone, and the strange story behind that. I mean, we're talking about Facebook, so just a little word to the wise. If anybody's flipping a guitar, here's what I just did. I found kind of interesting. So nobody really knows what those Solars are. I think at least in our area. So I put it up. I think I started at 1100, and I made it all the way down to 700. And I was finally like, I mean, this guitar's too nice, and it was brand new. I did not bond with it, and it was a trade. So I said to hell with it and put it on Reverb, and it went for almost $1,200.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
there
weird.
You go. Yeah.
They could have bought it here for $7. I took it down to Facebook, but on Reverb, made money.
I have that issue here because there's not much of a music scene here, and it's kind of a economically depressed area. So, I have to go on Reverb if I want to actually get value for something, or even just find somebody who wants something.
Right? Yeah. Right.
But it's a great place. I'm glad to have it because eBay's starting to kind of suck.
Yeah. Well, and I experimented. We've talked a little bit about Sweetwater's. The gear exchange, and I experimented with that, and then I found out like it would be awesome if you just wanted to buy something from Sweetwater because the fees are pretty cool. If you roll it into Sweetwater dollars, but they're pretty close to Reverb fees. So
I think Reverb is just the place people are going now too. So you can have other marketplaces that are doing similar things, but it's kind of like, go to Amazon if you need blah, blah, blah. It's sort of,
right.
It's like,
Yeah, I have a reverb account. I haven't used it much, but
I've sold a few small ticket things on there, and I bought a few things, because like I might want to buy a pickup, and it's a lot. Most music stores won't sell a used pickup as a matter of policy, but somebody might have one on there that's like $30-$40 cheaper. It's got plenty of lead to it still, and
next time shoot me a text. I usually have them laying around.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll do.
Periodically I have things laying around.
As a typical repair shop
would.
Yeah,
I've learned not to throw anything away.
Yeah. Oh, I can show you that Haught guitar now, by the way. So
the Haught. Yeah, I remember that from
my friend Gary. Speaking of, he said the same thing. He's like, hey, you. I was like, because he gets a deal with Duncan.
Oh yeah,
he gets an OEM deal.
Yeah,
and he was just like, yeah, just let me know if you need something. I'll get a good deal. But
yeah.
So
hey, you know what? I was watching him build guitars the other night.
Oh, on TikTok?
It's just hypnotizing, man. I just sit there. This guy's really good. He's building guitars on TikTok.
Wow. Scratch built woodworking kind of guy.
Yeah.
That's wow. That is beautiful.
It's a Buckeye burl top.
Okay.
Mahogany body, bolt-on maple neck.
Okay.
Ebony fingerboard.
Oh.
But his main thing is he's like a wood enthusiast. So he's got all these rare burls and like flame tops and stuff.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful.
And his most recent builds of the last like 6 months in terms of playability and all that, he's really kind of, he's gone from like a guy who builds guitars and, the quality was good, but now it's like extra. So
yeah. Well, and if you ever want to light up the eyes on a guy that builds guitars, just tell him you chop down a tree. and then I guarantee you the next question is like, what kind?
What kind of tree did you get?
How big are the chunks?
Gary Haught met a guy who just bought an antique door dealer. And the guy was like, yeah, I got a bunch of slabs of mahogany from making furniture. I don't know what to do with. He's like, well, I know what to do with them. He's like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, they get starry on it.
Oh yeah. No, he's got a whole shipping container outside his house. It's just full of old burl and slabs of wood. He's been collecting it for years. And because he used to make custom cabinetry for kitchens and stuff. And he just got into guitar building. He doesn't even play guitar. That's the wild part.
Really?
Like Leo Fender, where he
loves Fender, right?
Music. And then, he has a guy who does like setups and wiring and stuff there. And then he'll have me and this guy Pete play his stuff every Friday night. And when we do, like if there's like something up with it, we'll just like, hey, that one's got this going on, just so you know. And but yeah, just kind of a wild. I didn't expect when I moved back up here to northern New York that I'd be like knowing some really cool guitar builder who's just kind of 20 miles down the road. He's got like this crazy TikTok following. He's got people who've bought like 3-4 guitars off him by now. And
really?
Yeah, he's kind of just got this little cult following community that surrounds him. And
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's beautiful guitar.
I started speaking of TikTok, I started doing a couple lives just to experiment with it and seeing what it looks like,
Yeah.
And, it ends up being so Trouble's been on here a couple times. It ends up Trouble just talking to me on TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like just ending the live and just saying, hey, just call me.
Right.
And some of it's just boring. Like the other day I was right here pulling frets out of that Charvel out there and people were watching me and I'm like, so I watch Haught Guitars build a guitar, but watch me pull metal frets out of the front.
Some people are into that though. Like I'll go live when I'm restringing my guitar.
I've watched you restring your guitar.
That's cool.
And people will just come on and we'll just be chatting. And some people like know I, play, beyond the bedroom. And they'll ask me questions about like, touring stuff, gear advice, and whatever. And it's sort of treating it like a hang, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You have a cool, so he usually does this like when I take a break and get out of here and go upstairs and I'll eat a sandwich and some chips or something.
Yeah.
And that's when he's doing it. So I'm usually sitting there eating my lunch watching him. It's like, oh, look, Jeremy's restringing a guitar. Let me watch it while I eat my lunch.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, sometimes it's like I'm sitting and I'm playing and people are calling out riffs and I'll do that. But lately I've been finding people seem to be intrigued, like, because I got pretty cool setup here with cool amps and stuff. So like, I think I'm just going to pick like a piece of gear and go through it and be like, this is how this works. Like most people don't know what a 1973 Sound City head sounds like. So I'll probably do that soon or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a fun way to kind of do the guitar thing it's somewhat performative, I suppose. You got to be extroverted at the time, but
Right.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun because you just kind of get some repeat people coming in and like
There's Trouble.
All right.
So, Trouble will tell you. So
you
this might have been yesterday. Yesterday I had a Dan Electro 12 string and I just done a setup on it and I was stringing this guitar and talking to him and watching the comments and I screwed it up. I didn't say that during I missed one of the strings.
Oh.
And then I'm sitting there going
yeah.
I have 4 places for strings and I have 3 strings.
All right.
Where's this string?
Dude,
So I literally told it's Cody, Trouble's Cody. I said, Cody, I've got to shut this thing down. I didn't say so I could figure out where the hell the string was. I said, I'm obviously not. I said this during the live. I said, I'm not talented enough to count strings and put strings on a guitar and talk at the same time.
Multitasking.
Oh, yeah.
That's a little screen.
You got to be able to
I've
multitask.
had that happen where like, somebody will say, hey, do you know how to play the riff to blah, blah, blah? And I'll start doing it. And then I'll look up and be reading like what other comments are coming and I'll botch it. I'm like, I can't do both at the same time, but
Yeah. Well, and it's not like, I think people don't understand when you're doing that. Like I'm looking at 3 screens in front of me right now. And the one you all are on is pretty big. When I'm sitting there, like the phone's here and I'm at the workbench back there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I already can't see because I'm freaking old. So then you have to keep leaning over doing the old man thing. Like, what are they saying? What string am I on?
Yeah.
What Cody said, I knew something was up on that guitar.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
Well, he knew something was up and it was a Dan Electro.
Strings on it one time, it's like
what's that?
Two of the same gauge, the strings. I don't know how you're like in kind of like you're changing a bunch of guitars.
Like, man,
in that mode. You know what? After all these years, I still don't have one of those. I need to enter the modern.
Tell me, I have a whole thing of them outside my door. Why don't you say something?
A tuner, a winder.
I'm a music nomad dealer.
Oh, you got to get the one with the clippers.
I have it.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, okay. Yeah.
You know what was funny is the other day I was tearing one down and rebuilding it, and I was trying to watch TikTok and change the tuners out, and I put one. You have staggered tuners, so 3 are long and 3 are short.
Yeah.
So I did them incorrectly, and I inconspicuously changed them while on TikTok Live without anybody knowing I screwed them up. But I mean, it's just like you're sticking them through a hole, so it's not like anything changed, but it's like, okay, so now I'm live on TikTok. How do I inconspicuously change these from that hole to that hole and make it look like I'm putting a new one in? Mission accomplished. It's like, hey, no fuss, no fuss. I meant to do that. No, and Trouble said he had 2 of those things. Coach is laughing.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so what is next week? What is our schedule next week? So we're going into 60s and British, right?
Yeah. Now, the next Thursday, my wife's having a major surgery, so I would not be available.
Okay,
next
so
Thursday.
the next episode.
Kick it down in a couple for me.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all could, if you could do another episode that's,
But we're going, so just the next order. So we're going to go into the 60s.
Well,
and then we're going to meander our way all the way up to current day, right?
Yeah. In my opinion, so tonight we definitely laid out the roots. We did the 50s, obviously. We did a lot of the 60s. I think we've kind of hit on. That's good. We've done some of the 70s, but we've got a lot of good stuff on the back end of the 70s that we haven't even gotten into yet. So I'd say we would probably start going into there.
Maybe
also the theatrical side of what happened with, the little preview, like Alice Cooper, Kiss, that opened up a whole new visual side, not just the sound of heavy metal, but the visual side of what became there as we got into the 70s.
My favorite era of music is the 1970s. So this
And I can tell you, Necrosient Joe, I saw your comments and I knew as soon as I threw up Brian May and Joe Walsh and all that, y'all were going to say 70s. So I intentionally didn't put those up there, but I know Aggie's going to be ready for the next one we get in we get into the 70s. So.
Yeah, I kind of feel like tonight we kind of got up to about 1972-ish. We're talking about Richie Blackmore, Sabbath, pretty heavily. And then we kind of got this little line here, a little bit of Schenker, Now we've got 73, 74, 75 going into the back end of the 70s. And, of course, all kinds of wonderful things started to happen there around 77, 78, 79 to lead into, like, the 80s, version of hard rock and metal. So we got a lot of little rabbit holes we can go down as we keep going.
All I got to say is if people on this channel think we can get nerdy about guitars.
Music
nerdy.
I love it. I mean, it's so many fun little rabbit holes to go down to talk about all these conversations of the equipment, the gear, the bands, musicians, the albums, the guitars, the amplifiers, the whole deal. Great stuff.
Totally. Cool.
We are at 155 and probably a good quitting.
Almost 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours. And there's some guy that looks like me that has to listen to this tomorrow and put choppers
in it. To hang out for 2 hours.
Let's cut it 2 hours, please.
Roger, so we can probably do a 3-hour show if y'all want, because I can run my mouth all night long and all that.
It's funny because he was so fired up about doing this. He texted me. We talked about this last week.
Yeah.
He texted me, and then I told Alex, and he was like, yes.
And
Alex
me and Jimmy were like, all right,
Yeah. And then Alex texted me, I guess it was about a week ago, which is about a week more notice than I usually get. And I was like, oh, dude, like, of course, that's something I could totally like.
Jeremy, you need to send me your phone number so I can text you, because I kept saying, sorry, Alex, I got to get you. I kept saying, did you get a hold of Jeremy yet? Get a hold of Jeremy yet? I was like, boy, we're still we got time.
I'm just so distracted.
He's busy, and I'm a worry wards.
My dad duties,
Yeah.
Oh, good, man.
His day is dramatically different than mine, so I have plenty of time. Shoot me your phone, and I'll just shoot you a text next time.
Will do.
So and when I get pickups in, I'll shoot you a text.
Oh yeah. By the way, what kind of pickups was in the Haught? Was that a Seymour Duncan?
It's got a JB in the bridge and a.
Oh, the JB, right. Okay, excellent. Yeah.
So the JB's cool. I'm debating whether or not to put a custom 5 in it, because it's just a little less output. I don't love like the super hot. I kind of like a medium hot. So
okay,
but we'll see. I'm still kind of learning the guitar itself.
Right. Okay.
What it needs. What do I like? What don't I like about what it currently has before I.
You have a JB in the Rhodes too? Is that what's in?
No, I put the custom 5 in there. It came with an Invader when I got it. I hate it.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever thought of the JB and the Jazz together?
I'm not a fan of the Jazz in the neck.
I see the 59 and the JB and a JB and a Jazz a lot.
Yeah, the Jazz, I have that in my Rhodes.
That came in my Rhodes.
It's nice. It's a little too smooth. I like the kind of mushiness of the 59 a little more.
Right.
And the custom 5 is just kind of like, it's not as mid-rangey as the JB, and it's just not quite as like, it doesn't, it has a little more air to it. It's a little less compressed. So,
okay.
Alex, I have 2 of the distortions? Duncan distortions?
What's that?
The one I pulled out of yours.
Oh, yeah.
In my guitar?
That's what I just pulled out of that hum single.
That I've never tried those.
Oh, that was a
I have
that was a
too.
EMG 81 and a ESP stock single coil from the 80s.
No, the one that just came out of your New Horizon. The bright guitar.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So that was a custom. It's a Seymour Duncan custom.
I thought it was a distortion.
Like a
No,
distortion pickup.
Seymour Duncan custom and a Seymour Duncan hot rail.
Then
Oh, the hot
yeah.
rod. Okay.
So then mine came. The Mirage came with a distortion. So then I have a custom and a distortion.
Yeah, I don't know. What
Yeah,
you're-
I'm almost positive it's a
Just those
distortion.
two yeah, super distortion.
It's just
Yeah.
a regular custom, not like the custom this or custom that. Custom.
Well,
there's a
that
custom
Seymour Duncan custom pickup sounds really good.
Yeah. So I have
Yeah.
the custom 5 because I think the regular custom's ceramic, and the 5 is Alnico 5. It's the only difference.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Well, we can talk offline. And
Yeah.
Aggie said I'd miss. So it had nothing to do. He said you miss your pink guitar. It had.
Guitar.
So it didn't. The Solar guitars are good. I think. I thought the quality was good, and I didn't mind that it was pink. I thought it looked cool. Tell you the truth, it just functionally it just didn't work for me,
Unless you
and
were-
that has more to do with physical issues I have. I'm
Well,
sure
yeah.
that would be fine for anybody else.
We all like where knobs to be placed in certain places more than others, and switches,
Right.
Yeah.
cutaways, and all that stuff. So
Yeah. So it had more to do with that. I had no problem with the pink. The pink was fine. It almost fit. Pink is it?
not pink, it's salmon.
Yeah, it's not. He said pink. So I said this before. Like, I don't have any problem with a pink guitar. Like, if people want to say that I'm not manly, that's fine. But I'm usually the only person in the room that ran in a house on fire.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
right.
Hey, I got away with a candy apple red guitar recently on tour.
that candy apple red guitar looks great.
Surprisingly, now Jeremy, it's just funny because when I brought the guitar to tour, on the last tour we did, I was like, Bob liked it. Of course, he was the one I showed it to, and I was like, Steve and Ross are gonna hate it. They're gonna be like,
Yeah.
candy apple red, and they both fucking loved it. I was just like, are you sure about that? You really like this? And they're just like, that guitar's
it's
beautiful.
a sharp color, and I've always liked that color on that guitar.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah. It just because that contour of that top just really gives it.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah.
Is it, Alex? Is it close? Can you hold it up? I mean, some people watch or listen to this on podcasts, so they're not going to see it.
Oh, okay.
It's a.
Oh,
I'll
wow.
narrate. It is a candy.
I like
red.
that.
That's
Yeah,
hot as hell.
That is sharp.
If you see it like really close up, you could see all the little sparkles in there.
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Really,
Oh, yeah. That's
really nice.
I
That's
can
meant
quote.
really-
that's
It's supposed to
message.
be live too, like the lighting and all really kind of reaches
Yeah.
out.
I can quote Austin Powers. Yeah, baby.
I love my favorite configuration home single.
Yeah.
There's a Fishman.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Worked out pretty well.
Good
Very,
guitar.
very
Mhm.
well-built guitar. And sounds
Yeah.
really good too. Really good. You can hear the wood. Really. Like,
Right.
Roger, I remember you called me. And you're like, man, this guitar sounds really good.
Oh, yeah.
It's in tune well.
It is a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was funny because he asked me the one time. He said, well, how does it sound? I was like, well, this one position I had like a coil split and a coil tap, and I had it in position 2 and or voice 2, and he goes, yeah, but how's that sound? I was like, that sounded really good, and if you can get that to sound good, you can make it sound distorted good.
Right.
Like if you can clean it up and it sounds really nice like that,
Yeah.
it's gonna sound great.
Yeah. They just kick some dirt in and rock it out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a good guitar. Yeah, I was doing weird stuff. All right, well, thanks everybody. Please
Yeah.
subscribe and like and join us on the next episode. We will keep you posted. We'll keep you posted what we're gonna do next week, and then the follow on to the series.
Yeah.
And everybody hang tight. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time.
Cool.
Nanu,
Good night.
nanu.
Mhm.
Cheers.